welcome to the C3 Method podcast with your host, Robert Polenic. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. Today's podcast number 2275, and the title is Advice to My Younger Self. I had a client who is wanting to compete early next year in men's classic physique. They've been training for 3 years and they've been dieting super consistently, very regimented. And they've been training very regimented as well. So when they started full force, gung-ho. I want to do everything to compete. They're only 20 years old, so I'm super excited for them, and I think it's a wonderful place in life to be. I wish I was there when I was 20. And I had expressed that to the client, and they then asked the question, what would you tell 20-year-old Rob? And I loved it. I was like, that's a wonderful question. So their question was, you say you wish you were did what I did when I was 20. Well, if you were me and you could go back and tell 20-year-old you, what would you tell yourself? So I had 3 pieces of advice. Now, these are going to be specific to my experience, but I think there's a ton of benefit to these 3 pieces of advice that other people can use as well. So the first piece of advice was don't be afraid of carbohydrates. When I first started my journey, I was 15 years old. I was skinny fat. I hadn't exercised. I hadn't paid attention to anything I was doing food-wise. I was teasing a friend, and the friend said, well, at least I'm not fat. And I remember thinking to myself, damn, people see me as fat. I didn't recognize that. And I didn't like that feeling that somebody could say something that I would deem to be negative about me, but yet it was true, and it was true because of me. It was true because of what I was doing, or in this case, not doing, not paying attention to food, not exercising. So I was like, well, okay, I don't like being called fat. I don't like the way that makes me feel, so I got to do something about that. I got to make changes. Now, I didn't know what to do at that age, and this was pre-internet. I didn't feel secure enough at the time to voice my concerns to really anybody, because it's almost like to ask somebody, what do I do if I'm fat, is you have to admit that you're fat. And of course I knew I was fat, but I didn't want to admit it. And I didn't quite know who to ask. I had people in my life where I could have asked, but I didn't know if what they knew would be best for me. And there's a whole host of other things, is now you've made it public, and what if you don't follow through? Are they going to think less of you? And oh my gosh, just all this crazy emotional mess. And at that age, I wasn't even really aware of it enough to know that that's why I was shy and why I was hiding what I was doing. But my response was to just eat nothing and try to do sit-ups and push-ups every day. So I set a goal of, I believe it was 200 push-ups and 200 sit-ups, do that every single day. And it was my 15th birthday that I decided to start, literally on that day. And I was like, okay, the whole next year, I'm going to do 200 push-ups and 200 sit-ups no matter what, every day. At the time, doing 20 sit-ups crushed me, and I couldn't actually do 20 push-ups. So I couldn't do 20 push-ups in a row, but yet I was supposed to get 200 every day. I actually did it, except I only missed 10 days that whole year. It was amazing. It was a really cool start to the journey of me becoming mentally and emotionally tougher. Now, food-wise, I just thought, okay, well, if I'm fat because of eating food, if I don't eat food, I won't be fat. So I literally tried not to eat any food. I became anorexic. And that lasted for 2.5 years. During that period of time, I grew 4 inches in height, but I didn't gain any weight. I stayed 165, and I somehow looked skinnier and fatter at 165, 4 inches taller than I did at 5'8", 165. So essentially, I was starving off muscle tissue, and just doing bodyweight movements wasn't enough to maintain the muscle tissue that I had. I ended up being 17 and a half, skinny fat, and realizing this wasn't working. So I had 2.5 years where I just crushed myself and it didn't work. I then was, by that time, reading magazines about health and fitness and muscle building. There was Muscular Development Magazine and Men's Fitness. And there was a lot of protein. There was people talking about protein supplements, protein this, protein that, and protein helps build and repair muscle. So I was like, well, I definitely need some protein if I want to have muscle. So I started eating exclusively protein. I tried not to have any fats in what I ate. I tried not to have any carbs in what I ate. It was just protein. Well, that was better than nothing, but it certainly didn't work. I had no energy. I felt like crap, and it was better than before, but not anywhere near optimal. And then it took me just some years after that to start to realize, okay, carbohydrates are going to be great for performance, for energy, for filling out my muscles. I just need to learn how to use them well. And it was through my 20s that I figured that out. But I wish I would have known that younger. And I wish when I started my journey at 15, I would have known that carbohydrates were okay and they were actually helpful for me to have better performance, have better stimulus, to be able to maintain the muscle that I wanted, to actually fuel the process of building new muscle. It would have just been really nice to have known that carbohydrates were okay and they were helpful for my process. So that would be one piece of advice I would give my younger self, would be is don't be afraid of carbohydrates. Eat them before you're active, but maybe don't eat them when you're not active. Think of them as fuel. You put fuel in a machine before you run the machine, but once you're done running the machine, you don't really need to put fuel in until you're about to run it the next time. So if I were to think of putting gasoline in my car, like maybe as a goofy analogy, so just go with it, but if I'm going to drive my car, I want to put my fuel in my car then. But then once I've driven my car, I don't need to put fuel in. I'll just wait till the next time I drive it. That would be an approach. Carbohydrates are that similar approach. Is I want to put them in before I use my body. But then after I'm done using my body, I don't really need carbohydrates until the next time I go to use my body. And if I would have understood that, I could have grown a lot more muscle, got a lot stronger, had a much better physique at a much younger age. It would have made a huge, huge improvement in my quality of life, the quality of the progress that I was able to make. So I really wish I would have known that and utilized that at a younger age. The second piece of advice would be to lessen the extremes with food. So once I realized food was helpful, I did the typical over restriction and overeating in the periods of time where if I was like in a bulk season, I was eating like a whole Domino's pizza after workouts because it would help me grow. And it's like, no, I did not need 3,000 calories of pizza after one workout. Okay, I did a squat workout. Now I'm going to go eat 3,000 calories of pizza, which is mostly just fats and carbs, not even that high of protein for the total calorie count. It was just too extreme. But then when I would diet, I would over restrict. So I'm like, okay, well, I got to lose fat, so I'm only going to eat 1,000 calories a day. No. That actually limited the process. It made fat loss harder. It made it more likely for me to lose muscle tissue while I was trying to diet. I remember one diet specifically I did where I went from 220 down to 190, and I looked worse at 190 than I did at 220 because I over restricted. I had a ton of running and cardio, and I just lost a ton of muscle along with the fat. So the extremes for foods was extremely detrimental. And I wish I would have understood that small adjustments can lead to big changes given enough time. My timelines were too extreme, and that led to an extreme change. So if I want to get big, I want to get big in like 4 weeks. So I'm going to eat everything under the sun. If I want to lose fat, I want to lose fat in 4 weeks. So I'm going to eat absolutely nothing. My timelines were extreme. My choices were then extreme. So I wish I would have better understood that changes take 16, 20, 24 weeks, not 4 weeks. For me, a long goal was 8 or 12 weeks. I think I mentioned in a past podcast, I've done diets where I lost 50 pounds in 10 weeks or less. I had one diet where I lost 50 pounds in 8 weeks. Those are too extreme. I mean, 50 pounds should take like 25 weeks, not 8. So that was a mistake I made. Was I had extreme timelines. That led to then extreme changes in my foods. And that then led to an overabundance of food when I was trying to grow, but an insufficient amount of food when I was trying to lose fat. So it really limited the quality of the progress I was able to make. I wish I would have extended my timelines and made more subtle changes and then made more incremental changes over that timeline to get a better quality of process and progress. Then the third tip would be to train smarter. When I was younger, I just destroyed myself, absolutely beat the shit out of myself in order to try to get my body to grow. I accumulated a ton of injuries. I've torn 19 muscles over the years of me training, and the majority, like overwhelming majority, if not like all of them, were related to just being frustrated and impatient and trying too hard and pushing things too hard. And then combined with the extremes in food, I wasn't properly recovering, wasn't properly fueling things. So I just led to a lot of injuries that I could have avoided. So I wish I would have trained smarter. There's a phrase by Lee Haney. He was 8-time Mr. Olympia, and he said, "You stimulate, not annihilate." That's the idea of training. You train to stimulate the change you want. You don't train to annihilate the body. Like that's what I did. Was I just destroyed the body, and then I hoped through food and sleep it would build itself back to where it was, but then also 10 times X the return to get even more muscle and strength. And what I didn't realize is I was training so intensely and then eating so inefficiently that I was barely getting back to baseline, let alone making positive adaptive stimulus changes. So I trained just too intensely, too much. As I've learned more what is the right volume of training, I've been able to taper that down. I do like to train. Like I train 6 to 7 days a week. If I train 5 days a week, I feel like that week was like lazy to me. It's just, I like the emotional mental benefits of training. I like how I feel when I train. So for me personally, I like to train often. So that means I have to control the volume and control the intensity per session. And as I've been able to do that, I've been able to make way better progress. So now I'm up at like 255 pounds and significantly leaner, tenfold. Like I actually just did a DEXA scan the other day, and I was 18% body fat at 255. So that's not bad. I mean, would I like to be leaner than 18% body fat? Yes, and I'm working on it. But 18% body fat at 255 pounds is not bad physique, especially considering I graduated high school at 165 pounds and probably was like 30+% body fat. I had no visible muscle tone anywhere, no visible, like definitely not veins if you couldn't even see muscle separations or muscle bumps. I was without any doubt around 30% or more body fat, 165 pounds. So now to be 255 and under 20, that's a pretty good progress. It's a pretty good change. And that's been the result of finding a better balance of training to where I train to stimulate change, not annihilate my body into change. Then the other aspect of training smarter would be is to prioritize strength-based training, but control my technique quality. When I was younger, I didn't train to get stronger. I just thought if I lifted things at like an 8 to 12 rep range that my muscles would get bigger. I didn't think I needed to get stronger to get bigger. It was just every magazine said 8 to 12 and you get bigger. Well, now I've realized, okay, I needed to get stronger, especially when I first started. I couldn't even bench 95 pounds. I literally got pinned under the bar at 95 pounds when I first tried benching. It took me till I was in college to be able to squat 225, till grad school to be able to deadlift 315. I was weak. I was a weak person. So it's taken me a long time. Like I've gotten to decent strength levels, 600 pound squat, 700 pound deadlift, 430 pound bench press. So I've gotten to some good strength levels now, but it took a long time. To whereas if I would have prioritized strength, and by me, what I mean by that is going down to even sets of 3, 4, or 5 reps, but keeping my technique quality very crisp and clean. There's a scale called RPE, rate of perceived exertion. And when you use that scale in weight training, the range they typically refer to is 5 to 10. 5 is a moving, but it's in no way strenuous. 6 to 7 is, okay, it's starting to have a light burn. Like 8 is, okay, I'm past it burning. This is actually really hard now, but I can move it properly. 9 is, this is insanely hard. I'm starting to falter a little bit. I'm starting to get out of position just a smidge here and there. 10 is the best I could possibly have done. I barely survived, if I survived at all. What most people do when they try to lift really heavy is they do 10s or 9s. I would instead do like an 8 or a 7, where like, yeah, this is really heavy, but I'm going to stop at 3 reps, but I probably could have done a 4th and maybe a 5th, but I'm going to stop at 3. What that does is the load, the weight load that you're using for 3 reps, even if you could have done 5, is so much more than the load you would use to do 10 to 12 reps. So you get thickening of connective tissue, you get thickening of your stabilization muscles, and better just coordination for stabilization muscles. You get all this like neurological development related to the weight load that now when you go back to sets of like say 10 to 12, what you're using weight-wise doesn't feel as much, doesn't feel as hard. You can stabilize it better. It's not as intense of an overload. So now I can have better mind-muscle connection and focus on the quality of the movement. So I would do sets like 3 to 5, but at an RPE of 7 or 8. And that would now be the strength-based training that would be related to the best for muscle growth. Because that's what I'm training for now is muscle growth. That would allow me to progress the weight loads, but also the quality of technique I'm using in my more bodybuilding, muscle building type ranges, which for me is usually around 8 to 20. I know studies show that you can do anywhere between 5 and 30, but I feel like if you go down too low, you end up working too many other specific muscles. All your stabilizers are working. It's too intensity of a load. Can't stabilize the damn thing. So it's like, are you really maximizing the target muscle or are you just maximizing the movement? There's a big difference between the two. And then sets of 30, it's like, is this even heavy enough to challenge the maximal muscles, like the target muscles, or am I just getting out of breath or I can't stabilize anymore because I'm so fatigued? So I like to stay somewhere usually between like 8 to 20, and I find that works really well for me. I will do higher reps for my legs sometimes, but 8 to 20 is like what I consider a good sweet spot. So when I'm thinking about strength-based stuff, I would drop down to 3 to 5, but I would make sure I kept that RPE at 8 at most, to where it felt heavy and hard, but at no point in time did I lose control or proper technique. So those are the 3 main pieces of advice that I would give the 20-year-old Rob. What I would give to my younger self is don't be afraid of carbohydrates. Just know how to use them. Less extremes with foods, and that would coincide with having less extreme timelines for goals. And then train smarter. Train to stimulate, not annihilate, and then prioritize strength, but keep your technique quality very crisp so you don't get injured. So I would do sets of 3 to 5, but I would only ever get up to an 8 RPE. I would never test the capacity of my technique. Those 3 pieces of advice are going to make me a lot faster progress for all of the effort that I had put in. So that is the advice I gave to my 20-year-old client that I wish I could give to 20-year-old me. Okay, cool. If you have any questions, if you want to learn more about our one-on-one services, you can go to our website, which is www.c3method.com. The 3 is spelled out T-H-R-E-E, so C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. And there's tons of stuff on there that you can check out for just signing up for a consultation. And then I will meet with you, talk about what your goals are, talk about what type of services would work best for you. So you can use the website for that. You can also just email me at c3method@gmail.com. That would be great as well. And then if you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people you share it with, the more people can help. If you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name C3 Method. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.